Well, hello and welcome. I'm Misheard with Misheard Song Lyrics Podcast. We're doing Season 4, Episode 198, first ever Gino Vannelli misheard song lyric to his song, I Just Want to Stop. The misheard song lyric is, ooh, I've tried so hard to take it, but oh Lord, my heart won't make it. And then the correct lyrics is, ooh, I've tried so hard to take it, but alone my heart won't make it. So the oh Lord misheard song lyric and alone, pretty close. So either one works. So let's begin. So I always thought both Gino Vannelli and Richard Marx had a strong resemblance. Just look them up and put them side by side. And even with their really tall hair, they could be brothers. So we're going to go through a lot of rabbit holes today with this episode and even some ties to where I live, which is in the Northwest region of the United States. So let's start. So the song I Just Want to Stop is a song by Canadian singer-songwriter Gino Vannelli and was released as a single back in August of 1978. Yours truly was a mere 6-year-old. It remains his biggest hit single to date, reaching #1 in his native Canada and #4 on the US Billboard Hot 100. It appears on his 6th album called Brother to Brother. And the interesting reason probably why it's called Brother to Brother is the recording of this song for that album, Brother to Brother, was produced by Gino and his brothers, Joe and Ross Vannelli. The song was actually written by Ross Vannelli, and it actually received a nomination for Grammy Award for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance for their brother, Gino. Gotta love the brotherly love here, all right? So let's talk about Gino Vannelli. He was born on June 16th, 1952, so his birthday is coming up because I'm filming this also in June. He is a Canadian rock singer and songwriter who had several hit songs in the 1970s and 80s. His best-known singles include People Gotta Move from 1974, the song I'm doing today, 1978's I Just Want to Stop. I just want to stop for your love. I love it. Living Inside Myself, 1981, and Wild Horses in 1987. He was born into an Italian family, which is not surprising with his last name, Vannelli, in Montreal, Quebec. And his father, Joseph, or Russ Vannelli, sang with the Montreal dance bands of trumpeters Bix Belair and Maynard Ferguson. Hence the first lines of the song when he says, when I think about those nights in Montreal, because he's from Montreal. There we go. He actually was really wanting to be a drummer when he started his artistic, life. And he actually admired Buddy Rich and a Gene Krupa, and he played drums in a pop band while he was in high school. So he didn't start out as a lead singer. By 1969, at the age of 17, he signed a contract with RCA Records using the name Vannelli. So it's spelled V-A-N-N space E-L-L-I, instead of using the full Gino and then the correct spelling of Vannelli. Excuse me. Actually, it is the correct spelling. He just took it and changed it to 2 names. He studied music theory at McGill University in Montreal. And then Vannelli and his brother Joe moved to LA back in 1972. And being desperate and broke, what happened was they actually tried and waited for hours in the parking lot of A&M Studios to get a record deal. That's pretty ballsy. We're like, we're just going to hang out and hopefully we'll see the co-owners of A&M Records. Well, that's what happened. So when Herb Alpert, the co-owner of A&M Records, finally emerged, Vannelli ran towards him and gave him a demo tape while being chased by security guards. I can only imagine. But it proved him right. Alpert signed Vannelli and released his debut album, Crazy Life, in the summer of 1973. So let's talk about Herb Alpert, too, because that's the first rabbit hole we're going to go right into. So who is Herb Alpert? He was born back on March 31st, 1935. He is an American trumpeter who led the band Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass in the 1960s. I looked him up because I didn't really know what he looked like. He's a good-looking dude. I mean, hey, hello. So during that same decade, he actually co-founded A&M Records with Jerry Moss. What is A&M Records? I've always heard about him. So they were an American record label founded as an independent company by both Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss in 1962. And due to the success of the discography A&M release, the label garnered interest and was acquired by Polygram in 1989 and began distributing releases for Polydor Limited from the UK. Well, how did they get the name? I don't know, you knew this. I didn't. That the first choice for a name was Carnival Records, under which they released 2 singles before discovering, uh-oh, there's another label that already has that name. The company then renamed it to A&M Records after Albert and Moss's initials, A&M. So from 1966 to 1999, the company's headquarters were on the grounds of the historic Charlie Chaplin Studios, located at 1416 North La Brea Avenue near Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. So that's interesting. Then here's where the acquisitions happened. Polygram was acquired by Seagram and dissolved into Universal Music Group in 1998, and A&M's operations were ceased in January of 1999 when it merged with Geffen Records and Interscope Records to form the record company Interscope Geffen A&M Records. Wow, that's a mouthful. Excuse me. In 2007, Interscope Geffen A&M announced that A&M was revived as trademark and brand and was to be merged with Octone Records to form A&M Octone Records, which operated until 2014 when A&M Octone was folded into Interscope. Today, A&M's catalog releases are managed by Verve Records, Universal Music Enterprises, and Interscope. So wow. Here's another did you know. And despite the shutdown in 1999 and the name being phased out during the 2000s, present-day Sting releases, so Sting's one of their artists, continues to bear the A&M name and logo. I love that he's kept that going. So a little bit more about Alpert. He had recorded 28 albums that have landed on the Billboard 200 chart, 5 of which became #1 albums. He also had 14 platinum albums and 15 gold albums. Alpert is the only musician to hit #1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 as both a vocalist for This Guy's in Love with You from 1968. Remember that song? This guy's in love in you. I love it. And instrumentalist with 1979 Rise. He's the only one that's done that so far. Alpert also reportedly sold 72 million records worldwide and has received many accolades, including a Tony Award and 8 Grammy Awards, as well as a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Back in 2006, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was also awarded the National Medal of Arts by Barack Obama in 2013. Wow. So now we know about Herb Alpert, A&M, but let's go down another rabbit hole, because I remember as a young kid, the famous 1965 Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass album titled Whipped Cream and Other Delights. Remember that? It's very iconic, has a beautiful, stunning brunette covered in whipped cream on the cover. Well, that model was a Dolores Erickson. She was born September of 1935. She's still with us, thank goodness. An art director by the name of Peter Worf at the time was engaged to Erickson's best friend and used Erickson on many Capitol record shoots. If you look up her name, you'll see all the album covers she's on. During this time, she became acquainted with Herb Alpert, the trumpeter, and, of course, A&M Records co-founder, and watched part of the recording of the Lonely Bull album in Alpert's garage in 1962. The photo shoot for the cover of the 1965 Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass album Whipped Cream and Other Delights, which remained in the Billboard Top 10 for 61 weeks, wow, and whose sexy cover became what they called a cultural touchstone, began in mid-morning and went on through the afternoon and paid Erickson approximately $1,500 plus expenses, which probably in 1960s time, a lot of money. And now, I wish I would have seen the conversion. Good pay for one day of work. So this is how it came down, how it went down, as the youngins say. So the shoot took place in Worf's studio. It was a converted garage. Erickson was then 29 years old and 3 months pregnant. She sat on a stool with a white Christmas blanket covering her from the waist down and then wore a bikini with the straps down. So it looked like she was topless, but she really wasn't. She then was covered with shaving cream, not whipped cream, because if they would have used whipped cream, it would have melted under the hot photographic lights. So with a dollop of whipped cream on her head. As the shoot progressed, the shaving cream began to slide down her breast slightly. Months later, Worf sent her 2 outtakes, and apparently when she saw the more risque pictures, she took them over to her girlfriend's house and hid them behind her friend's refrigerator, not wanting her conservative husband to find them. I wonder if he ever did see them eventually. Initially, Alpert felt the cover image was, he quote, pushing it a little too far. I thought the censors would be down on it, but in 2006, it looks pretty damn tame. Exactly, but then it was like, ooh, what is this? That's why it's so iconic. And then in 1970s, Erickson herself returned to college, studying art and none other in Portland, Oregon. That's where I live, in the northwest part of the United States, and began painting and owned a gallery by the name of the Wild Deer in Kelso, Washington. So Washington is a state above Oregon where I reside, for a decade. So there's that connection with the Northwest here. And as of mid-2000, she continued to paint on what one newspaper called impressionist style works in her duplex on the Columbia Heights. So there we go. Now we know about Herb Alpert, and MRecords, and now this beautiful model, Erickson, and where she's at and how she's tied to the Northwest. So let's go back to Gino Vannelli. So then Vannelli released an album, Gist of the Gemini, in 1976 through A&M Records. Then his 1978 album, Brother to Brother, also with A&M, produced that single, which we're talking about today, I Just Wanna Stop, which reached number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 that I said earlier, number 1 in Canada, and actually received, like I said, a Grammy Award nomination. His next album, Nightwalker, also produced a top 10 hit called Living Inside Myself. Mr. Vannelli received the Juno Awards for the Most Promising Male Vocalist of the Year in 1975, thanks to his brothers for helping him write the song. And then back in 1976 and again in 1979, he also received Juno Awards for the Best Male Vocalist. He and his brothers, Joe, his musical partner during those years, shared the Juno for the Best Production for Brother to Brother in 1979. That's cool. And then despite the success of singles Black Cars and Hurts to Be in Love in 1985, as well as Wild Horses in 1987 after his 1979 world tour, but Gino Vannelli appeared live only here and there throughout the 1980s. Let's go down another rabbit hole. So in 2008, Vannelli became an unlikely symbol for the National Basketball Association. Yes, the NBA championship run by the Boston Celtics. Why is he connected to them? So after each blowout home victory during the 2008 season, the video crew at the TD Bank North Garden, where the Celtics would play, would always play a clip from Dick Clark's American Bandstand that featured a bearded disco dancer clad in a tight Gino Vannelli t-shirt. Now I want a Gino Vannelli t-shirt. The tradition became known in Boston as the Gino Time, and Gino t-shirts became common at Celtics games. The Wall Street Journal reported in 2008 that dancer in that Gino shirt was a young man named Joseph R. Masoni, and he died of pneumonia in 1990. He was 34 years old. So God bless you, Mr. Joseph Masoni. He brings us delight. Go on YouTube, you'll find it, Gino Time, and you'll see the t-shirt and the dancer. So there you go. And then also Mr. Vannelli has Northwest roots to where I'm from, in Oregon. There was an OregonLive.com article written back on August 28th, 2013, titled Gino Vannelli Avoids Spotlight in Oregon where he lives but draws crowds elsewhere, shared that, quote unquote, back in the early 1970s, early his career, Vannelli arrived in Portland to open for another act. Ticket sales flopped and the show was dropped, ironically. With a day to kill, he was walking around Portland where he fell for a young woman working in a jewelry store. He and Patricia had been married 38 years and have a grown son, and it was her Pacific Northwest roots that threw them to the air where they tired of Los Angeles. They lived in Portland's Mount Tabor neighborhood for 8 years before settling in the Columbia River Gorge. Isn't that awesome? I think he's still here. So another did you know about him is Vannelli was also one of the first Caucasians to appear on television dance program Soul Train. In 1974, he was invited to tour with Stevie Wonder. The first Caucasian was a Dennis Coffey, being the first on Soul Train in January of 1972. So much we've learned about Mr. Vannelli, about how he met his wife in Portland, Oregon. Now he's here, how he got a record deal by just stalking Herb Alpert. And then now we know about A&M Records and then the beautiful model behind the Whipped Cream album. So if you have great suggestions like this misheard song lyric that I shared today, please send them to any of our Facebook site, our Instagram, as well as our Twitter, if you know how to use Twitter. I still am trying to figure this out. Or just send us an email at misheard, that's MISSHEARD songs @gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you. Till then, keep singing the songs wrong. Bye.